Welcome, incredible listeners, to another journey into the heart of a captivating story. Thank you for tuning in. Please take a moment to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and prepare to be immersed in the stray's secret life, learning to hunt and survive. Ember was a whisper of a creature, a mere breath against the vast, indifferent expanse of the ancient woods. No older than a few months, her fur, once a vibrant russet, was now matted with mud and burrs, her slender frame a testament to days, perhaps weeks, of gnawing hunger. She was a stray, not by choice, but by cruel circumstance. A sudden, violent downpour, a flash flood, and the world had swallowed her family whole, leaving her a trembling, orphaned scrap of life. Each rustle of leaves was a monster, every shadow a lurking threat. Her small paws, once cushioned by the soft warmth of her mother's den, now ached with the relentless journey across rough terrain. The forest, which should have been her sanctuary, felt like a labyrinth designed by hunger and fear. Her belly rumbled with an emptiness that gnawed at her very bones, a constant dull ache that overshadowed all other sensations. She remembered vaguely the taste of something warm and meaty provided by her mother, but those memories were like fading embers in a dying fire. Now survival was a raw, primal instinct, unguided and unrefined. She sniffed at the base of ancient oak trees, her nose twitching, hoping for some forgotten nut or a fallen berry, anything to quell the gnawing void. But the late autumn forest offered little to a novice like her. The ground was cold and damp, the air thick with the scent of decaying leaves and the sharp bite of impending winter. She stumbled upon a hollow log, a gnarled, moss-covered relic of a tree that had fallen decades ago. It offered a meager shelter, a respite from the biting wind that whispered through the bare branches. Curled tightly within its confines, Ember shivered, not just from the cold, but from an overwhelming sense of loneliness. Her tiny heart beat a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a drum solo of terror. How long could a creature so small, so unequipped, last in this wild, unforgiving world? Every passing minute felt like a test, every breath a stolen victory. Driven by an unbearable hunger, she ventured out as twilight painted the sky in hues of bruised purple and gray. A tiny field mouse, plump and unsuspecting, scurried across a patch of fallen leaves. Ember froze, her instincts flaring. This was it, her chance. She lowered her body, mimicking, without conscious thought, the hunting stance she'd seen her mother adopt. Her muscles tensed, her eyes locked onto the mouse. She took a tentative step, then another, her small paws barely disturbing the ground. But the mouse, sensing the shift in the air, darted away with a lightning-fast twitch, disappearing into a tangle of roots. Ember pounced, a desperate, clumsy lunge that ended with her nose buried in cold, damp earth. The scent of the mouse lingered, a cruel taunt. Frustration, a new and unfamiliar emotion, welled up within her. She knew she needed to hunt to survive, but the howl remained a terrifying, elusive secret. The forest held its breath, waiting to see if this small, lost soul would fade or find a way to ignite the spark of survival within her. Days bled into weeks for Ember, each one a desperate scramble for sustenance. She had learned to distinguish between edible roots and poisonous fungi, to track the faint scent of a beetle beneath a stone, but true hunting remained an enigma. Her clumsy attempts yielded little, and her body grew leaner, her spirit more weary. Yet a flicker of something new had begun to stir within her: observation. She had noticed her own reflection, not in water, but in the watchful eyes of another. An older vixen, scarred and grizzled, her fur the color of burnt umber, had begun to appear at the fringes of Ember's awareness. This vixen, whom Ember silently named Silas, moved with a silent grace that defied her age, her movements economical, her gaze piercing. Silas never approached, never offered a direct lesson. She was a phantom, a living shadow that materialized on a distant ridge, beneath a gnarled oak, or at the edge of the stream where Ember sometimes dared to drink, but Ember learned. She watched Silas stalk a volume, a masterclass in patience and precision. Silas would become one with the undergrowth, her body flattened, her breath held, her eyes fixed. She didn't lunge wildly. She waited, a statue of predatory intent, until the perfect, unsuspecting moment. Then this swift, almost imperceptible movement, and the prey was hers. Ember, hidden in the brambles, absorbed every detail. Ember began to mimic. She would crouch low, her small body pressed against the cold earth, trying to disappear into the tangle of ferns. She learned to listen, not just to the obvious sounds, but to the subtle rustle of a mouse in dry leaves, the faint chirp of a grasshopper. Her ears, once flattened in fear, now swiveled independently, tuning into the forest's myriad whispers. She practiced holding her breath, feeling her own frantic heartbeat against the silence of the woods. Her muscles, though weak, began to remember the coiled tension, the sudden release. Her first real success was not a mouse, but a plump, buzzing beetle. She had spotted it crawling slowly across a sun-dappled stone. Remembering Silas's patience, Ember had waited, her tail twitching with anticipation. She lowered her head, inching forward, until she was close enough to strike. Her pounce was still awkward, but it was swift enough. The beetle was hers, a small, crunchy victory. It wasn't much, but the taste of it, combined with the triumph of the hunt, was intoxicating. It was a spark, igniting a tiny flame of hope within her. Silas was gone when Ember looked up, but a faint, earthy scent lingered on the breeze, a silent acknowledgement. The elder vixen was not a teacher in the conventional sense, but a mirror reflecting the path to survival. Ember was beginning to understand that the forest was a classroom, and every rustle, every shadow, every fleeting creature held a lesson. The gnawing hunger was still there, a constant companion, but now it was joined by a nascent determination, a fierce will to learn, to adapt, to survive. The secret life of the stray was slowly, painstakingly being revealed, one silent lesson at a time. As autumn deepened, bringing with it a biting chill that promised the imminent arrival of winter, the lessons became more urgent, the stakes infinitely higher. The forest, once merely indifferent, now felt overtly challenging. Food sources dwindled, leaves fell, stripping away nature's camouflage, and the ground hardened underfoot. The constant gnawing hunger intensified, turning Ember's stomach into a hollow drum. Silas, the silent mentor, continued her watchful presence, her movements less frequent but more deliberate, as if demonstrating the grim reality of the changing season. Ember observed Silas employing new, sophisticated techniques. She watched the elder vixen use the wind to her advantage, always approaching prey from downwind, her scent undetectable. She saw Silas utilize shadows, melting into the dim light beneath a thicket of pines, or using the uneven terrain to break her silhouette. Ember, driven by the relentless ache in her belly, tried to emulate these tactics. She learned to feel the direction of the breeze on her fur, to position herself so that her scent was carried away from her potential prey. She practiced flattening herself against the cold earth, becoming a part of the landscape, her breath shallow, her heart a steady thrum against the ground. One frigid morning, Ember spotted a plump field mouse scurrying near a cluster of frost-covered ferns. Remembering Silas's lessons, she circled around, ensuring the wind was in her favor. She moved with excruciating slowness, her paws barely disturbing the crunchy leaves. Her eyes, sharper now, tracked the mouse's every twitch. She was close, so close. Her body tensed, ready to spring. But a sudden gust of wind, carrying her faint scent, alerted the mouse, which vanished into a burrow before Ember could pounce. Frustration boiled within her, hot and bitter. She slammed a paw against the ground, a childish outburst, but immediately regretted the noise. Silas from a distant ridge had vanished. Failures were frequent, each one a stark reminder of her inexperience. A clumsy pounce would send a rabbit bolting. A misjudged leap would leave her empty-pawed. She learned that hunting wasn't just about speed or stealth. It was about understanding the prey, anticipating its movements, reading the subtle signs of the wild. She spent hours watching squirrels bury nuts, observing the flight patterns of sparrows, learning to distinguish the alarm calls of jays from the territorial cries of crows. Every creature was a potential meal, but also a teacher revealing the intricate dance of survival. Her body, though still lean, was growing stronger, her movements more fluid. Her paws, once raw and sensitive, were now toughened by countless miles. The cold no longer sent shivers through her frame as readily. She was adapting, evolving. The hunger remained her constant companion, a relentless driver, but now it fueled not just desperation, but a burgeoning competence. She was no longer just a stray. She was a student of the wild, slowly mastering its brutal, beautiful lessons. The promise of winter loomed, a final examination, but Ember felt a new, quiet determination settling in her bones. She would not just survive, she would thrive. The true test of Ember's burgeoning skills arrived with the first heavy snowfall. The forest transformed into a stark, white canvas, beautiful yet unforgiving. Tracks were easily visible, but prey was scarcer, burrowed deep or seeking distant shelter. The cold seeped into her bones, making every movement an effort. Her hunger was a constant, gnawing presence, sharp and insistent. This was the true Hunger Games of the wild, and Ember, now alive and cunning young fox, was a determined participant. One crisp morning, while foraging near a cluster of snow-laden pines, Ember caught a scent, fresh, musky, distinct, rabbit, a large, plump one by the richness of the scent. Her senses sharpened, every nerve alive. This was a significant prize, a meal that could sustain her for days. She lowered herself, melting into the shadows cast by the deep snowdrifts, her russet fur a striking contrast against the white. The wind was tricky, swirling unpredictably. She needed to be perfect. She began her stalk, a slow, methodical ballet of stealth. Each paw lifted and placed with agonizing precision, barely disturbing the pristine snow. Her eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the terrain, searching for the telltale twitch of an ear, the faint outline of a huddled form. The rabbit was hidden well, beneath the overhang of a snow-covered bush, its brown fur almost invisible against the dried leaves. Ember circled, using the sparse trees and undulations in the snow to break her silhouette. She remembered Silas's lessons, patience, positioning, the perfect moment. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The cold bit at her paws, but Ember felt nothing but the intense, burning focus of the hunt. Her muscles tensed, coiled like springs, ready to unleash their power. The rabbit shifted, a tiny movement, just enough. This was it. Ember launched herself, a blur of russet and white, a silent missile streaking across the snow. The rabbit, startled, burst from its cover, a panicked streak of brown against the white backdrop. The chase was on. Ember poured every ounce of her learned skill into the pursuit. She weaved through the trees, her body low to the ground, her powerful legs propelling her forward. She anticipated the rabbit's evasive turns, cutting corners, using the slight downhill slope to gain speed. The rabbit darted left, then right, a desperate dance of survival. Ember matched its every move, her instincts now finely tuned instruments. The chase led them across a frozen stream, then through a thicket of thorny bushes, where Ember's fur snagged and tore, but she felt no pain, only the relentless drive to capture her prey. Finally, with a burst of speed and a perfectly timed pounce, Ember cornered the rabbit against a fallen log. Her jaws closed, swift and decisive. The struggle was brief, brutal, and utterly primal. When it was over, Ember stood panting, her chest heaving, the warmth of her kill a stark contrast to the biting cold. She had done it. She had hunted, truly hunted, and succeeded against formidable odds. A silent satisfaction settled over her, a deep primal sense of accomplishment. From a distant, snow-covered ridge, a single pair of amber eyes watched, then vanished. Silas's presence, a quiet acknowledgement of a lesson truly learned. Ember was no longer just surviving. She was mastering the art of the hunt. With the successful rabbit hunt, Ember's confidence soared, but the wilderness had more lessons to impart than just the art of the chase. Survival was a multifaceted jewel, gleaming with the promise of sustenance, but also glinting with the sharp edges of danger. The winter deepened, bringing with it not just cold, but fierce blizzards that buried the forest under feet of snow, and ice that turned every surface into a treacherous mirror. Ember learned to read the sky, recognizing the subtle shift in air pressure that preceded a storm, seeking shelter in rock crevices or beneath the dense, snow-laden boughs of ancient firs. Finding water became another critical skill. With streams frozen solid, Ember learned to identify patches of less dense snow that could be melted with body heat, or to seek out the rare, unfrozen seepages near thermal vents or underground springs. She discovered the importance of conserving energy, of resting in sheltered spots, of not expending precious calories on unnecessary movement. Every breath, every step, was a calculation in the grand equation of survival. The forest, while her provider, was also home to creatures far more formidable than a rabbit. One evening, a low, guttural growl vibrated through the crisp air, sending a shiver down Ember's spine. A large gray shadow detached itself from the deeper woods, a wolf. Ember froze, her heart hammering against her ribs, her every instinct screaming danger. She remembered Silas's silent warnings: blend, disappear, become invisible. She pressed herself against the snow-covered trunk of a fallen tree, her fur, though not perfectly camouflaged, merging with the shadows. The wolf passed, its scent powerful and unsettling, oblivious to the small fox hidden mere feet away. Ember learned the delicate art of evasion, of recognizing the signs of larger predators, the fresh tracks, the distant howls, the subtle shifts in the forest's natural hum. Humans, too, posed a different kind of threat. Ember encountered the scent of metal and smoke, the faint echoes of distant human voices. She learned to avoid the curious, linear clearings in the forest where strange, loud machines roared past. She saw the glint of snares and traps, cleverly hidden but detectable by a keen nose and cautious step. She learned to give wide berth to anything that smelled of human habitation, understanding that their presence often meant unpredictable danger, not just for prey, but for predators like herself. She also began to understand the intricate web of life. She watched a great horned owl sweep down silently, claiming a field mouse she had been tracking. There was no anger, only acceptance. The owl was a part of this world, just as she was. She saw deer browse peacefully in clearings, their large, wary eyes constantly scanning. She heard the chattering of squirrels, the scolding of jays, each sound a piece of information in the grand symphony of the wild. Ember was no longer just a struggling stray. She was a participant in the vast, interconnected community of the wilderness, understanding its rules, navigating its perils, and finding her place within its complex, beautiful, and often brutal embrace. Spring arrived, painting the forest with vibrant greens and bursts of color, thawing the icy grip of winter. Ember, now a sleek, robust vixen, moved through her territory with an effortless grace that spoke volumes of her journey. Her fur, thick and glossy, shimmered with health. Her eyes, once wide with fear, now held a keen intelligence, reflecting the wisdom gleaned from countless trials. She was no longer the stray. She was Ember, a master of her domain, a testament to resilience, a true child of the wild. Her hunts were rarely failures now. She knew the secret pathways of the voles, the preferred basking spots of the lizards, the nesting habits of the ground-dwelling birds. Her pounce was a blur of efficiency, her stalk a lesson in invisibility. She moved with purpose, her senses constantly attuned to the symphony of the forest, the distant cry of a hawk, the rustle of a badger, the subtle shift in wind direction. Every sound, every scent, every shadow held meaning, and Ember understood its language. She remembered the desperate, trembling cub she once was, huddled on a hollow log, consumed by hunger and fear. She thought of Silas, her silent mentor, who had shown her the way without ever speaking a single word. Silas had long since vanished from her territory, perhaps moved on, perhaps succumbed to the cycle of life. But her lessons lived on, every skilled movement Ember made, and every successful hunt, and every cautious step away from danger. Ember carried the legacy of survival, a torch passed down through generations of wild creatures. One warm afternoon, while patrolling the edges of her territory, Ember spotted a flicker of movement near a dense thicket. It was a young kit, barely more than a year old, scrawny and hesitant, its fur dull, its eyes wide with the same fear Ember had once known. It was clumsy in its movements, struggling to pounce on a grasshopper, much like Ember herself had once struggled with the beetle. Ember watched, hidden, a silent observer in turn. She felt a pang of something akin to empathy, a recognition of her past self in the vulnerable creature. She did not approach, did not interfere. The wild had taught her, and now it would teach this new generation. Ember continued her patrol, a sense of quiet contentment settling over her. She was a part of this intricate, beautiful, and brutal world. She was the hunter and the hunted, the survivor and the living testament to the circle of life. She found her own den now, a secure, well-hidden burrow beneath the roots of an ancient pine, a place of safety and warmth. The forest was no longer a labyrinth of fear, but a home, a challenging but ultimately rewarding place where she belonged. Her secret life, once born of desperation, had blossomed into a life of purpose, mastery, and profound connection to the wild. She was a testament to the fact that even the most forsaken stray, given the chance, could learn not just to survive, but to truly thrive, becoming an inseparable part of the very fabric of the wilderness.